Duncan Epping, who's a consulting architect who has been instrumental in implementing HA solutions in various sites, and so he'll be able to offer some advice about sharing his experiences implementing HA, and I'll be sharing my experiences of the product that we developed. So what we'll cover today is I'll speak briefly about what HA is. I presume that most of you already know a bit about what it does. I'll discuss some of the implementation details. Knowing how HA is implemented will be helpful for you to avoid some common pitfalls and make best use of it. I'll also describe some use cases, the way HA performs under certain scenarios, so that will give you some insight as to how it performs. And each of the 5 can act as a failover coordinator and recover from one or more host failures.
The owner and author of yellowbricks.com. I'm the co-author of Foundation for Cloud Computing with vSphere 4 and the Quick Start Guide. But there's a new book coming up that might interest all of you, which is the HA in the ERA's Technical Deep Dive that I co-authored with Frank Denneman. It's probably going to be released 2 months from now, so look out for that one. One of the things that Marc actually mentioned is the way that the primary nodes and the secondary nodes work. How the heartbeats actually communicate, make sure the communication actually runs between these nodes. And he already also mentioned that it's really important that these heartbeats actually function to avoid a false positive. So if a false positive occurs, it basically means that virtual machines are being restarted without having a decent reason for it. So one of the ways to actually avoid that, and that's something that Marc just mentioned, is to use the HA maintenance mode. So, for instance, when you're doing some sort of switch maintenance on the networking level, use this maintenance mode to actually avoid false positives. Another thing that I wanted to point out is the host maintenance mode itself. Because of the fact that primary nodes actually are the ones that are responsible in the end for restarting virtual machines, it's really important that the primary nodes, that there's always at least one primary node available. So when an issue occurs, when one of your primary nodes, make sure that the primary node role is actually being replaced by one of the other nodes. So the way of doing that is actually placing the host that failed into maintenance mode, or for instance, actually remove it from the cluster. And another thing, again, I wanted to point out, keep in mind that there's a maximum of 5 primary nodes. So one of the reasons the whole primary node concept exists, as Marc said, is to actually reduce the level of heartbeats that occurs in the cluster, so to actually reduce the level of overhead. And so one of the things that you run into when you start designing your environment is basically the amount of primary nodes you can have in your environment. So it's a maximum of 5. And something that we'll show on the next slide is how you can actually set that up. One thing that we actually added in the latest release is actually a mechanism with which you can actually control which node is primary, so preferred primary mechanism. And meaning that on every single layer we had 4 nodes so
Eric Sloof was just an average guy from Holland. First, he was on the radio. Then he went to the bathroom. Now, he's in the Twilight Zone. Forever.